Well, we'd like to welcome everyone out to another Sunday afternoon from the BYU Library Family History Center. We're going to be talking today about what's new and what's not so new in ancestry.com. This is going into the startup page. We can make the disclaimer that we really kind of need to know about, and that is everyone will see something different if they make any changes. So basically, you can modify, customize, or change your startup page, take out of pictures or things you don't seem to use, and put in things that you may find helpful. And you may find as you go through that process that there are a lot of things that you perhaps have never looked at or ever had any contact with and may find to be very helpful. First of those is the shoebox. And the shoebox is a digital web-only folder on Ancestry's homepage where you can temporarily save records from Ancestry that you're not ready to attach to your tree. So it's kind of a storage box. And it makes it a little bit easier to use the record and keep it. If you're not sure, for example, that this is actually the person you're involved with, you've got somebody else in mind, then keeping it here in the shoebox will allow you to come back to it at your leisure from on Ancestry and do some more research or reread it or see if that record is something that you want to use. Sometimes if you come across a record and you think, well, I really need to keep this record, but I don't have time right now to go look up the person, this other person, you just happen to run across something, then it's very useful for that purpose also. Probably the part that is most impressive is the recently added and update collections. This is actually an announcement from Ancestry. And when you look it down and scroll down through this, you'll see that there is a considerable listing of these, which came in, most of them in the same months in 2025. So you might want to spend some time going down through the list. It may click and give you some ideas of records that you think you should probably go searching for. Now, in the back of your mind, you might keep the thought that Ancestry is going to be going through all these records and using them for the basis of their record matches, their green tree icons. And so as time goes on, you're basically going to have access to all these records through those record hands. Well, that may take a little bit of time, but you might be surprised at how many of the records are brought up, not only through record hands, but simply being available. Now we need to know one of the things that's been around since computers started, even before the internet was fully integrated around the world and everybody was on the internet, were message boards, or there were claims or names for all these different types of connections. And in this case, when you add a subject that's something you want to find or go look for a board with a specific, you can add your own questions and explain where you're doing some research. And it's possible that someone searching on the same person or the same topic would answer. And then there's a lot of the information that's provided if you just go there and use it as a reference. Family Search has the same kind of thing as a comparison. It's called Communities. It's not directly part of the FamilySearch.org website. It's a separate kind of website, but is available under the little question mark on the top of the right-hand top of the Family Search page. So basically on this is the link is going to be there on Ancestry unless you redesign your page, your startup page to have a different setup. You may or may not be aware that there's called the Curiosity Center on Ancestry, and that's an Ancestry family history learning hub. This is kind of an interesting thing about Ancestry. Ancestry purchased a lot of different programs over the years and has integrated some of them and kept some of them and then allowed other ones to disappear, for example, or nearly disappear. There's an Ancestry wiki, and over the years, very, very little other than kind of a transcription of the old physical book called The Source was incorporated in that originally. It's still got a lot of really valid and good information, but it's not usually mentioned anywhere. And I don't know, the last time, it's been a little while since I looked it up, but it was still online. But this is another part that they've been adding things to that are new and up to date. And you might not be surprised, or might be surprised, depending on what you're used to finding that Ancestry has their other programs that they're going to be, or other websites that they're going to be promoting. And so you may find that they suggest that your attention be directed to Fold 3 or to newspapers.com or some of their other online products. One thing that's probably going to happen is, how did I find all this stuff on Ancestry? And basically all I did was click on the toolbar there at the top, the home and the trees, search and DNA and support topics and things, right there on the startup page and in the middle of the program, and came up with all of these different features. One thing that is mentioned several times and may even pop up as an ad for a product and from Ancestry is a part of the program they're now calling Ancestry Pro Tools. Here's a beginning instruction about it, what's on the Ancestry Pro Tools, types of things that you might find in that particular version. You'll soon find out that if you have interested, that that's basically an add-on to whatever subscription you happen to have to Ancestry as an additional charge. So there's a pro version. Some of them are significant enhancements to the program itself. But for the purposes of this particular presentation, I'm going to focus on updates that may not require Ancestry Pro tool subscription. And if I mention it, I'll be careful to say that these are Ancestry Pro required features. And here's just for a beginning, just to start, so you'll know what we're talking about with Ancestry Pro, is the listing of here of things that you can see. Now, in reading down through this, you'll find that some of these features are in a different format, but do essentially the same thing on different websites. For example, your tree checker is on Family Searches now, has for a long time had the ability to check some of the entries and mark them without a source, for example, or whatever. MyHeritage has a consistency checker that does the same thing. It takes 40 plus different possible errors or inconsistencies. So this is something that's embedded in some of the other programs. In this case, with the other listed things here, they're added into their Pro Tools version. I really do not want to discourage people about using Ancestry. In fact, I think that it's a fabulous tool with tremendous amount of information and one of the best, if not the best, genealogical search engines that finds information that's pertinent. And many of us who are doing research consistently have Ancestry up as our main research tool, whether we're working on Family Search or some other website. And that is because we're finding more information. Now, each of the websites out there have what you would say strong points and perhaps not so effective in some other areas. One thing you can think about with Ancestry, especially here, if you look at all their new files, is English or close English, like Irish or other languages that fall into that kind of close to England category. And then thrown into those records might be a few other records in French or in Germany or France or in Germany or whatever. So the strong point about ancestry is its records are primarily in the area of English-speaking North American and French and British Isles, and then French again in Europe, and then some other records. You may find a surprise. Occasionally, you'll find that there are a lot of records from Sweden, for example. That's just one example. Now, how do I know this, or how would you know what there was on any of the websites? Well, the simple thing to do is to go to their card catalog. Now, this is what it's called on Ancestry. On Family Search, it's just the catalog. And on MyHeritage, it's the overview of their collections. And what you want to do in this is look and see if they have anything even listed for the area where you're doing research. So while you're looking at Ancestry and it says they have all these 33,856 collections in their card catalog, it might be a good idea for you to check to see how many they actually have from your part of the world or what you're interested in. So you can see that there's heavily on the numbers where it says filter by location over there, you can see Canada plus 1,000, Europe plus 1,000, and North America plus 1,000, and the USA plus 1,000 itself. And then the other countries like in South America and Asia may not have quite as many. And what they have may be very useful, but there may be other websites out there, not all of them in English, that would have a lot of additional information.
Elder Tanner?
Yep.
There's a comment by Marlon that says, in family search centers, we have access to Ancestry Institution Edition. How close is that to Ancestry Pro?
It's not. It's just the regular copy of the program. It's not close at all. Plus, the Ancestry Institution Edition, the main difference is that you can't put your family tree on it. There's no family tree support. Because if you're working in a library, obviously you can't work on your own. So in order to actually use the program, you need to have your own copy of it and be able to have your family tree. Obviously, the other part you're not going to get in the Institution Edition is if you do the DNA testing, you have no DNA testing. A question pops up about newspapers, same question. The answer to the second part of that is no. That's newspapers.com. And I'm not sure how many libraries have library institution versions of that. At the BYU Library Family History Center, we have the institutional version. Our using of that, we find out that it's limited compared to the pay version if you go ahead and pay and get a subscription to newspapers.com. So hope that helps. Here's some, and this was just what caught my eye as what I would call impressive collections of historical records, things that I wouldn't say I was surprised to see, but I'm impressed that these records exist and are searchable. The first one is a little bit been on there for a while. That's what I said. Some of the stuff here is not so new, but this is one where they have 19 million Holocaust records from the Holocaust in Europe. And this is a significant record collection. And of course, on Ancestry, for the most part, almost everything on Ancestry is indexed. So you can search, and they are going to full text search, and I'll mention how it works here. But their search and their record matches or record hints are very, very effective and helpful. This one was interesting, 2.7 million additional Korean War era draft cards. The draft cards have proved to be an extremely helpful research tool because they have information there about occupations and age and all sorts of things about the person, all of the people who were required to fill out a draft card. This is a collection of a database of historical newspaper clippings that mentions enslaved people. Some of these are mentioned as collections. I don't know and haven't had reason to try, but if I would not be surprised with newspaper clippings if that doesn't turn out to be part of newspapers.com or in the pro version. So you just might be aware that some of these things may be in that. Voter registration, the handwritten voter registrations from 1915 to 1956 in New York and in Manhattan. This is one that's very helpful, is the 1921 census of England and Wales. The census was put on Find My Past, which is the big website in the British Isles. And because it was on Find My Past, they had a exclusive on it for a period of time. I guess the exclusive ran out, and now it's on Ancestry.
Elder Tanner, we do have one new question. Could you explain the different entries required between title and keywords in the card catalog to get a good result?
First, here's what I would do on Ancestry before going out and starting to find something in catalog and catalog search. I would make sure that I had my family tree on Ancestry, and every part that I was make sure that you're up to date with where you're doing your research. This would be even if I have my primary family tree on another website like Family Search or on MyHeritage. Basically, the reason there is because by using all 3 or 4 of the large websites, you get much broader access to the records. And doing research, I would do it by using the names and dates and places of the people that you're looking for. Looking for a specific collection is fairly easy because the title of the collection is going to have a word in it. So, for instance, if you put in Rhode Island, you'd get every record that had the word Rhode Island in the title. Keywords is such a vague thing. I seldom find it to be very useful. Other people probably are more keyword oriented, but veterans records, for example, veterans may be in a whole bunch of different places, and that would be a keyword. Electoral registers would be keywords, but those also show up in the titles of the collection. So kind of back and forth with that. What I find the catalog to be helpful is the filtering, because you can filter down here to see whether or not you even have records that you can find on Ancestry. So if you go to use the filters, what you're doing when you're doing a filter is you're telling Ancestry which records you don't want to look at. So if you put in that you're looking in the United States, that means you don't want to look at any records from someplace else. And then your search for records is focused on the United States, and then further down to a state, and then further down to a county, and if appropriate, further down to a city or a town. And you will soon very quickly determine whether or not Family Search has the records you're looking for. Same thing goes for each of the other large websites. They all work essentially the same way. If you go to Family Search, you look for the place, then you look for the places included in that country, for example, and then you do places included in that state or that places included. And so you're working your way down, doing exactly what the filters do on the card catalog on Ancestry. So I hope that helps. The keywords thing is sort of a catch-all. It's where you put something hoping you'll find a topic that will be helpful. I have not found any long lists of keywords or anything like that out there, so I'm not sure what I would try to do it from that standpoint. Here's another thing that you may not be aware of is you can have multiple trees. And what I do when I'm helping people is from time to time. It's not something I do all the time or whatever, but occasionally when someone has a rather complex question for me, what I will do is to set up a family tree. Sometimes I invite the people, the one person or whatever, to look at it with me so they can see exactly what I'm doing as I'm doing the research. I find that after a while, unless when I have, sort of constant contact with the person, if I lose contact over time and I don't find that we're doing it, then I will basically shut down the family tree that I have and sort of keep the list into short, being around a year or so. And then if I do have time to time contact with the person wanting research, then I have a basis for talking to them about the area of their family tree that they're interested in. And you can start a family tree with anybody. So if you wanted to, and they gave you their great 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 grandfather, and you were going to help them find that person, you could put him in, or her, the mother in, the wife in, as the starting person, and begin the tree with that person and whatever name you want to give the tree. Now, AI is using handwriting recognition to find record hints and add additional people. They have a very sophisticated handwriting recognition program. And you may have noticed these. If you work on Ancestry for any length of time, you will probably see these green people show up. And the green people are people that Ancestry has identified by searching through all their records for wherever the place is where the people are, plus all the other trees on their family on Ancestry, other family trees, and they've also be looking at records and whatever they can find. So these are their best guess based on their AI searches, and they're looking for the specific criteria. And what I found is they are generally quite accurate. I have found some that were just not the person. They just weren't the parents because they just didn't have any records particularly about that. But basically, when you get into this, you'll see you've got two different options here. You have record matches, which are the little green trees, which are also being assisted by artificial intelligence. Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence in this context, it's really the same program that they're using to do the chatbots and all that. It's the same type of thing. In the chatbot, you'd be looking at what's called a large language model, which would be the basis. Like for Google, it's like billions of records. And when you're talking about using AI on a website like Ancestry, then what you're being trained to is the information from the family trees and the records here on this website. So it's not doing you a general look over the internet for information. It's trying to tell you that they have records on the Ancestry website, which they have found using the superior record searching capabilities that they have from AI. So now these are suggested people, not just a set of records that you can look at and see whether those records apply to your person, but they will tell you that they found this person in looking at all the different people out there on their family trees and others. Now, because this is AI suggested, it's a suggestion, and because it in part is based on another family tree. So here's kind of an example. I'll take this Thomas Springthorpe person, 1723 to 1783, and we'll have a look at what happens when I click on that green person here. I get an actual birth date in Leicester, and I get another death date in Rutland. I have 5 records that are green leaf suggestion records in effect. And down there at the bottom, it says this came from somebody's family tree with the name of the person. Okay, so when I'm here, the first thing you don't do is automatically copy this information and use it. If you just click on it, you'll have a thing that says, yes, this is the person. And if you do, it'll just add this person with the sources that they've found automatically to your family tree, to your part of the family tree, right where that person is located. But it's very important that you review all the records for consistency and accuracy. It's very possible, and what I have found is that in this case, when the suggestion comes, basically you either know, because of the research you've done so far, you either know that this is possible or not possible. And if you find out that you just have to look here and see where the person was born and died, and that may give you an attempt that no, this isn't the right person at all. This family did not come from Leicester. And the guy is suspect because he was born in one county and died in another county. And we'd need to know that that was actually what was happening. Now, if I went back and used what I've been already learning about with doing research for the Springthorpes, I would know that having a birth in Leicester and a death in Rutland was not that much of a problem, because these people were travelers. They were people who went from area to area and sold the goods. Another name for travelers was gypsies, and they could have possibly been Romy gypsies. So that's possible. But again, looking at the records is very important. So this is where you want to go to see if that happens. So here's what you find if you find the records. So then you can look down through here. So the first thing here is it says Thomas, son of John Springthorpe. Well, that's not meaning that this is his father. This isn't a record for John Springthorpe. This is a record for his father. But also, it shows that if Thomas was having a will in Leicester, and down below here, if it says that there was a mention of a death record of death date or whatever in another place, that's not going to be going anyplace. In other words, if his death is correct up there in Rutland, having a will and a will proved in Leicester means that he probably didn't die in Rutland. So this is a kind of thing that you need to look at and be aware of the possibilities that even though this is a supposedly big AI thing, that it may not be any better than you doing a research. So just be sure to check the sources. Don't just start junking stuff in. Now, they do have document transcription on Ancestry, but it is basically up here in the corner, and it only works with documents that need to be in the gallery. So you need to save the copy of the document into the gallery, and then you can get a transcription of the document. I have not tested. I'm putting this out. It's only happening in the last 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks actually, that I have begun the process of testing the different record transcription accuracy from Family Search, from Microsoft Copilot, from Google Gemini, from Gemini, or however you say it, and from ChatGPT, and just a list of different places to look for transcriptions and their accuracy. So I'm not sure how accurate the handwriting recognition is. And I would suggest that what my experience is that so far is that they all have problems in picking up names that you would think would be fairly simple to transcribe and turn out to be not. On this one, I didn't mark it, but if you look down through here, you'll see his father's name. And if I happen to know his name, and it's Sidney Tanner, but if you look over in the transcription, it comes out as Simi, Sima Tanner, Simi Tanner. So that's the kind of thing that you're finding, no matter how accurate the rest of the transcriptions are. Okay, so this is the transcription over here on the side. Okay, now there's the StoryScout. And this is an interesting process. I'm not sure from the standpoint of, for this is me speaking, not you, not telling you what you need to do or what you do. I find some people find this to be tremendously helpful. This is all information that I know. Most of the time, very little of it is new to me because of the time depth of me having worked on these for so long. And many of the people that I already have significant amounts of information about. But there's always a chance that this may give me some kind of information that I did not really know about or understand previously. So it's an interesting kind of topic. They kind of tell you about. This is a copy of what the StoryScout looks like. It's actually kind of a slideshow type thing, and you can see here what it says. It looks on the census form, and then it explains to you what he was based on the form, what information you would be searching for, and that you could get out of this particular census form. Now, from the standpoint of learning about how to do genealogical research, this would be a good instruction because if I were to sit down with you individually, for example, and you had not looked at the census records before, I would be showing you this kind of information on the census record and then telling you how it worked. Well, that's in essence what this is doing. So the story may be not just, let's say, informational, but it may be educational. Memories are basically kept in the ancestry gallery. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, when you're working in the gallery, you have access. If you have records that are handwritten records, like you can see here, a number of handwritten records, you can always use clicking on those records, try the handwriting recognition. Now, there's one thing that I don't see mentioned in the Pro version, and I'm not sure from that standpoint whether or not the handwriting recognition would be classified or may be classified as they get into it into the Pro version. This is another add-on kind of thing to Ancestry, and that is there are beginning to be more and more people out there advertising that they will digitize and scan your documents. And if you upload them to Ancestry, you'll have them going up to Ancestry, and they're saying will be saved forever, for safe for years to come. Well, they're only as safe as the company. So that's the only thing you can really think about that. The other thing is that the Ancestry app on the phone gives you the option of scanning documents using the app. So there's an app for that. One of the things I have been doing did for quite a few years was consultations for the Salt Lake Library in Latin America. I found that a large percentage of people did all of their research on their phones. And so for those of us who are not coordinated enough to type even very slowly, have to type on a phone, and it's very painful. Basically, the phones aren't much of a solution, but the younger market out there in the world is really very adequate. And if you've ever watched somebody type with their thumbs on a phone, you can know that they can use them as fast, at least, as I can on a computer. So here's the smartphone app that allows you to, you can go in and scan right here. There's a plus scan with a photo. So you can put your photos down there and scan them in. And then basically there's this add media pop-up that comes up, and you say scan photos, scan a documents, take a photo, camera roll, and upload. Those are all self-explanatory. Now we have a huge number of AI-based entities out there that are restoring, updating, colorizing, doing all sorts of things with photographs. And Ancestry has begun that process also. Might mention that MyHeritage began that process about 3 or 4 years ago, before anyone else had started to do that, that they began the restoration and enhancement, and colorization and animation and the whole spectrum. Now that Google has jumped into that in the sense of creating what they now call Nano Banana, yes, that's the name of it, Nano Banana. That is their answer. That's one of the things that I'm still working on evaluating and looking at from the standpoint of reality, I guess is what I want to put. There's not much you can do in restoration that doesn't destroy the original image. And if you're going to be going in it, if you're interested in doing this and colorizing and doing it, even into the area of animation, the caution that I would always put out there is save your original and don't make changes, because the original may contain information that's lost in these programs. There are lots of different ways of organizing and working with your data. It is important to add dates. It's important to put in the location, and it's important to have a description of the records that you take. This is just an ongoing process in my life because I'm the recipient of various large collections of records from various ancestral people, from my parents, from my grandparents, from my great-grandparents on all sides. And these records have come in not just in small amounts, but in major boxes and boxes of records. So this is a kind of an undercurrent background of everything that goes on in genealogy for me, and that is I have this constant background of identifying photos and sorting documents and identifying documents. And if I were putting all my information in documents and photos on Ancestry, that would make some sense. But that's, I'm going to be quite frank, that's not where I'm adding my pictures. Most of that is for living people. Most of what I have is for living people, and I'm not putting that information up on the websites yet. Family Search is working on creating a place where living people could put their information up, and I am waiting for that to be completely settled before I do a big effort. It is good for recognizing and understanding who your people are. It's also interesting to find out how many people have some kind of a photo up on Ancestry. And this is the organized, and they say up there this is a beta. Probably this is a way of knowing it may become a standard feature of the program, or it may be made a feature of the Pro program. Now switching over to DNA. One thing that's happening on DNA, on Ancestry and the other main programs are Ancestry and MyHeritage. 23andMe was a big program, and it's had a whole series of problems and bankruptcies and all sorts of things. And it's not one that I would be waiting, I would wait and see if that company comes out of its problems. But right now, Ancestry and MyHeritage are the two big programs. And one thing, if you did your DNA test any time ago, any years ago, or whenever they first came out to do DNA tests, one thing you'll know is that periodically your ancestral regions or your ethnicity report changes. Mine changes in kind of significant ways because, first of all, I have never had, and no one in my research line going back generations and generations is from Norway. So I have no way idea where my Norway came from. I really have nobody from Germany that I've ever found. I do have people from the Netherlands. I do have people from Denmark. I do have people from all parts of the British Isles. I really don't know where my Spanish ancestors came from. I have never come across anyone who spoke Spanish that I was related to. And before, I was related to people in Italy, which made sense because they inhabited England or the British Isles for around 300 years, 300 to 400 years. So there was possibility of Italian somehow getting into the game, but I'm not sure how Spain made it this time. This is really interesting. It's the feature is called ThruLines, and ThruLines are constructions by ancestry showing your relationship to the people that you have in your family tree, not by the records, but by DNA. So people who are related to me, my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents, are all 100% accurate. These are my grandparents and great grandparents. So it's not surprising to me that they show up in the DNA. But I can imagine if you hadn't taken a DNA test and took one and didn't really know too much about your family, that you may be surprised with what comes up on this page. And this is basically a way of showing how you are related to someone else who has the same match as your remote ancestor. So one thing I would suggest as we go along, you could probably get the idea here that you take some time to explore the options. Just click around, learn, and if there's something here that interests you and you say, well, I didn't know it did that. I would really like to know more about that. Here's a suggestion on how that works. If you saw the name of a place like ThruLines, for example, and you didn't know what that was or how it worked, you could look on Ancestry, but a simple thing to do would be to go to Google or Edge, whichever, Chrome or Edge, whatever you're using, and just simply ask the question. You could do that with Microsoft's Copilot, or you could do that with Gemini or the new AI mode of working with Chrome, and get the instructions on where it is, and how it works. It'll just do it. In like 2 seconds, you'll have the explanation. So it makes it very interesting way to get information quickly. The last question that I just answered here, that's the difference. Could you explain the different entries on Ancestry that require title for searching in the catalog that require title and keywords? I would just suggest trying that question on either Gemini or Google or whatever, that you're going to find out that they can tell you pretty much everything about websites and things on the internet. When I've been searching for instructions on when I've upgraded a computer or I've upgraded my system or whatever, if I need to know anything, I just ask the AI chatbots now. I find out pretty quick if it works. I have found that they will tell you. Sometimes they'll pick up old instructions and you'll go say, well, there is no such thing as this on the menu. How do I find this on the menu? And I think if you keep asking that question, I've found that they pretty much will keep responding and look it up for you. So exploring the options may require, today is the way that we resolve those seemingly difficult issues is becoming more straightforward. And so if you think about it in that context, AI becomes it really does become some kind of an assistance to you, but it's only because you ask it questions that you know it could probably answer, or turns out they can answer. So from that standpoint. Okay, well, thanks for watching.